Welcome back to Thimbleberry U. I am John Jagay, joined by Amy Walls from Thimbleberry Financial. Amy, good to be back with you. Have a nice Thanksgiving.
I did. How was yours?
It was excellent. Thank you very much. I'm excited for today's topic because it is something that people don't take enough advantage of, and there's a huge potential here. We are talking about the power of Roth money.
Yes. Roths are so powerful because they really allow people the potential to have more money to spend in retirement and to keep flexibility.
Love both of those ideas. So we'll start right at the top, Amy. What is the value of these Roth dollars?
Yeah, as I said, people can keep more money. And what I mean by that, and I talked about this in a prior podcast, is you've got that tax control triangle, if you will, where you've got pre-tax money, your 401ks, your 403bs that are going to be taxed 100% as ordinary income when you draw out of them. Then you've got maybe some stock, mutual funds, things that aren't inside a retirement plan that aren't growing as efficiently because they're taxed along the way and they have a lower tax rate.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have Roth money. And if you do this right, that money will never be taxed again.
I like the sound of that.
Yes. If you're not getting taxed again, you also have potential to maybe have that be your most aggressive type of money so that it works harder for you as it's growing, if you can tolerate it, right? It's all about risk tolerance too.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you go to use that money, all of it is available to you. It is important that you follow the rules.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece that's important is that Roth IRAs, especially more so than 401ks or 403bs, are flexible.
And what do you mean by flexible?
What I mean is, especially for a Roth IRA that you've contributed to directly, it's a little bit different with the conversion, that you can turn around the next day and pull your basis out.
Really? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yep. The amount you contributed can come right back out to be used. So, for example, if you're trying to debate between retirement funding or funding a kid's education and you haven't funded a Roth and you can, it may be a really good idea to use the Roth as a vehicle that can be used in both directions.
Because you have the flexibility of being able to access that money when you want. And with the Roth, because you've paid the taxes on the way in, despite however much it grows, you're not paying the taxes on the way out, generally speaking.
Yes. Yep.
And again, like you said, Amy, this kind of allows us a lot of different choices and flexibility, and not just in terms of expenses and kids' college and stuff like that, but in our own retirements too, right?
Yes. We have clients that have retired that have a good amount of money in Roth IRAs, and they have used them for home improvements. When they're already drawing out of the 401k type money, drawing down on that to reduce the impact of the required minimum distributions at 70 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
They're using that money early, and then they say, oh my gosh, we have this big project we want to do on our house. Where do we pull the funds from? Well, we definitely don't want to pull it from the IRA and create an even bigger tax bill there.
Right.
So their Roth IRA has actually kind of been a savior in that sense. It's also a conversation that we might have with clients in retirement is, I'm ready to buy a new car.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to have a loan.
Right. Why would you at that point?
Absolutely. But if all of that money is in IRAs, if all of the money you're drawing from, you're recreating a paycheck from, comes from IRAs, well, now all of a sudden you're taking more income. It's like giving yourself a raise for the value of the car plus the taxes on that raise.
Ah.
So that car, if you're not going to take out a loan, may get a lot more expensive. So if you have the Roth, you just have some flexibility to maybe buy the vehicle using those dollars without a tax bill.
I feel like that'd be a life goal for me. I feel like down the road when I'm retired, I would love to walk into a dealership and say, well, my old car is going to my grandkids. So you know what? I want this car and I'm paying you cash. I'm not financing it. I'm not worried about interest payments and depreciation and all that. I'm just going to pay for this. What's the price? Let's figure out a price. Go talk to your manager if you want. And once you come back, I'm going to hand you a check or a cash or whatever it is, and we're gone. And I'm not going to worry about payments on it. I love that idea.
Yep.
So why aren't we all doing this, Amy?
Well, the government likes to limit the good stuff. Right? They have to have tax money. They just do.
Right.
And so for every give you, there's a gotcha.
I like that. Okay.
And you can only contribute $6,000 or $7,000 into a Roth IRA.
And that's annually, right?
That is annually. If you are under age 50, then you can contribute $6,000. If you're over 50, you can contribute $7,000. But you also have to meet some income requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2019, which is almost over, if you're single or filing taxes as head of household, your income has to be under $122,000 to contribute that full amount.
Okay.
And if it's over $137,000, you can't contribute at all. And those numbers change to $193,000 and $203,000 for people who file married filing jointly.
Okay.
Now, the good news about that is those numbers do adjust for inflation. In 2020, they will increase. So for someone who files single or head of household, you can contribute the full amount if your income is $124,000 or less, but you're phased out if your income is above $139,000.
Okay, and for married filing jointly next year?
Yep, $196,000 is the low end to contribute the full amount, and $206,000 is when you're phased out.
Okay. There's like a loophole to everything here, Amy, and from what I understand, there are some workarounds to these numbers and limits you just mentioned. What can you tell me about those?
Yeah, there's really three main ones. A lot of employer-sponsored plans now have Roth options on them. So with your pre-tax 401k, you can contribute $19,000 in 2019 or $19,500 in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
If your employer has adopted Roth provisions onto that 401k or 403b, you can contribute that, and I'll use the 2020 numbers, $19,500 to a combination of the pre-tax side or the Roth side, as long as you don't exceed that maximum amount.
So if your employer has gone into the Roth world, that increases the amount that you can put in.
Yes, and you still might be able to do the Roth IRA on the other side because your 401k and an IRA are two separate things.
Got it. Any other workarounds to mention?
Absolutely. Roth conversions. So with a Roth conversion, you can take IRA money that you may have. Okay, then I'm going to talk about this in its simplest form first. If you have money sitting in a traditional IRA, maybe you left an employer and rolled your old 401k or 403b into that IRA,
mm-hmm.
right? And it's sitting there. You can actually convert those dollars into a Roth.
Okay.
Now, what happens is, let's say that's $20,000,
mm-hmm.
and you convert that $20,000. Well, that counts as taxable income for the year you did the conversion.
Okay.
Right? But no taxes, or ideally, you don't want to have the taxes withheld on the conversion. You want to convert the full $20,000 over and have cash on the side to be able to pay that tax bill.
So in a conversion, Amy, you're going to be paying the taxes at the time you do the conversion, and it's a good idea to have the money available on hand to be able to pay those taxes, right?
Absolutely. I think most custodians will give you the choice to have your taxes withheld at the time you do the conversion. But if you're under 59 and a half, you're going to pay a 10% penalty on the amount you pull out for the taxes. So it really only makes sense if you have cash sitting on the side to pay that bill.
So if you're using money in the actual account to pay the taxes, you're going to get dinged for pulling it out. But if you're able to take that money from another bucket somewhere and pay the taxes without touching the amount that's in the account, then you come out okay.
Yes, absolutely. Now, along with employers adopting Roth provisions to these plans, many of them are also allowing large conversions inside of the plans. So, we work a lot in tech, and a lot of the employers that our clients work with are offering that, especially starting in 2020. And so same rules apply, but it's just inside their 401ks that they can now elect to have a certain amount converted from the pre-tax side to the after-tax Roth side.
Okay, and what can you tell me about the backdoor Roth idea?
Backdoor Roths are for those folks that have phased out of being able to contribute directly to a Roth IRA.
So that's if you're over those income limits we mentioned earlier.
Yes, if you're over those income limits, this is a way that you could potentially still get money into a Roth IRA. And because the government does like to limit the good stuff, it's just jumping through a few extra hoops.
Okay.
And so essentially what it is you contribute to a traditional IRA, but you do it with a non-deductible contribution.
What does that mean exactly?
So most of the time when people think about contributing to a traditional IRA, they think, oh gosh, that might reduce my taxes today, right? If I contribute $6,000, that's $6,000 less in income that will be reported on my tax return.
Mm-hmm.
Yay. Well, if you contribute in a non-deductible way, which means you have to report that on your taxes, it's not going to reduce your income today. So it's after-tax money sitting in that traditional IRA.
Okay.
And so that's step one. And then you need to convert that money over into the Roth IRA.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a combination of contributing to a traditional IRA and then using the conversions that we just talked about.
Okay.
There are a couple tricks, though, that you have to be aware of. And that is, again, government limits. And the tricky part is how distributions from IRAs are treated. And there were changes a few years ago that made all IRA distributions pro rata. And that means that the way they're contributed is how they're distributed. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have $100,000 in an IRA and $75,000 of that is pre-tax and $25,000 is after tax.
Okay.
So let's make this simple and say that 75% of what's in that IRA is pre-tax and 25% is not.
Okay.
Okay. So ideally, you could say, oh, we want to convert just this part that hasn't been taxed.
I see.
Right? Because if you convert something that doesn't have a tax bill on it, that hasn't been a deduction, it converts tax-free.
Got it. Okay.
But the government said, no more. We're not doing that. And so now, if you were to, and I'm simplifying this a bit, but if you convert those dollars, every conversion would be treated as 75% taxable and 25% not.
Okay, so what they do is they take the ratio of what's taxable and not, and they apply that to every dollar you're dealing with.
You should be an advisor because you explained that better than I did.
I'm learning from you, Amy. I'm learning as we go. What other benefits are there to these types of Roth strategies?
When you look at IRAs and 401ks and 403bs, the only type of account that does not have required minimum distributions is the Roth IRA.
Really? Okay.
Yes. And just because we haven't said it in this podcast, a required minimum distribution is when you have to start taking money out at 70 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And that can often raise people's tax bills if they have contributed heavily to those pre-tax accounts.
My dad turned 69 in January, so I know this is on his radar a year and a half from now for sure.
Absolutely. I used to, when I first became an advisor 16 years ago, I know I'm dating myself there, I learned fairly quickly that if we had some older, more mature retired clients come in
Sure.
for an initial meeting, they were 72. They had taken distributions twice, and their question was, how do we make this stop? We're spending more on taxes than what we had intended.
Wow. And again, we say this all the time to me. This is why you need to speak to a professional that understands all this stuff. And let me move on to my next question here, which are, what are some of the myths that you hear about some of these strategies that we've been talking about today?
That is a great question because there are definitely some. The one that I hear most is that it only makes sense to put money into a Roth account if you are in a low tax bracket today.
The idea behind that being if you're going to pay the taxes now, you want to do it when you're in a lower tax bracket.
Yes.
Why is that a myth?
Because there's more than one factor that makes a decision, right? And in our world of financial planning, everything is a lever or a wheel. And if you pull one lever, all the other pieces move.
One big giant game of Jenga.
Absolutely.
Don't topple it over.
So it can make sense to do a conversion in a high income year if you want to be able to do backdoor Roth contributions and have those tax-free into the future.
I see. Okay.
Another factor that may play a role is what's your time frame. So with any of these strategies, there is, or especially with conversions, there's a break-even point, right? Because if you do a conversion, you're going to have to pay a tax bill. So how long does it take you to make up for the money you just paid
over in taxes? I see. Okay. Yep.
But from that point forward, you're ahead. So you have to weigh all of those pieces. And the other one that I hear, and it goes the same idea, is that it's always better to reduce my tax bill today with pre-tax retirement contributions than to contribute to a Roth, for example, in a retirement plan.
Okay.
And just as before, there's multiple decision-making factors, and there isn't one right answer for everybody.
And I think that, again, it comes down to your personal situation, all those levers and wheels, and no two people's financial situations are exactly the same, right?
They are not. Everybody is unique and different. And the other piece, it's not just what is your current situation, it's what are your goals?
Yeah.
You know, when companies talk about maybe their path, this is the path that you follow to get to retirement, or this is your number. There isn't a number, because if you change one factor, that number changes.
And that is why it is so important to speak to somebody like Amy over at Thimbleberry Financial that can really help you understand the ramifications of every decision you make, because even a small decision can have huge implications both before and during retirement, right, Amy?
Absolutely. If you think about making a decision like this when you're in your 30s, it just ripples through all the way into retirement and the end of your life.
I'm trying to make smarter decisions at 39 than I did at 22. So your point is very well taken, Amy. If somebody wants to reach out to you at Thimbleberry, what are the best ways to get a hold of you?
Yeah, they can give us a call at 503-610-6510 or check us out at thimbleberryfinancial.com.
Thanks for the time as always, Amy. Look forward to our next episode.
I do too. Thanks, Jag.
Registered representative. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer. Member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advisor representative, Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Thimbleberry Financial are not affiliated. Cambridge does not offer tax or legal advice. Thimbleberry Financial is located at 650 Northeast Holiday Street, Suite 1600, Portland, Oregon, 97232.